What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, a general appreciation of TV past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and serialized at MLHelty2452 to see what all I'm watching. All right, this week we are talking about two of the more prominent shows that is kind of flowing out, just kind of floating out there in the TV landscape right now. We're talking about Adolescence, the four-part limited series on Netflix that has garnered a lot of attention, and rightfully so. And we're talking about Daredevil, Born Again, which that just wrapped up its nine episode arc this past week. So by the time this drops, it may have been like a week or so after the final episode, but there's still lots to think about, lots to parse through, and things to look forward to for not only season two, but the MCU as a whole. But to talk about that, I have a SiftPop contributor, fellow SiftPop writer, the one of the two people who have brought new life to the BEC. I have Jake B here with me because he refuses to let me say his last name because I'm going to butcher it. So, Jake, welcome back. Appreciate you coming on and also sticking with this because I've been sick the last couple of weeks and you've been super flexible with your schedule. So, thank you for that. Greatly appreciate it. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. No, I think it worked out perfectly because now we get to talk with all 9 episodes of Daredevil under our belt now, which did feel a little weird going into our previous recording. Knowing we were going in without having talked about this finale, which in hindsight would have felt very weird given one of my notes,
Yeah.
because there was definitely something like I was typing like 10 minutes into the finale, just finishing off my notes, where it's like, you know what? I really need more of this. And then they immediately gave me more of that.
Yeah.
So, really happy. Well, not so happy you were sick, but happy it worked out this way.
It did work out in our favor because for that last episode of Daredevil, I really liked it. It's
Mm.
hard to kind of analyze a little bit with Daredevil with, the first 8 episodes and not having a whole lot of resolution, but also because this season has been just wildly uneven. And we'll get to that. But first, let's start with Adolescence. So, Adolescence is this four-part miniseries that has just flown under the radar at first. They dropped it kind of similar time as the Electric State, and they were trying to, get a lot of people to watch the Electric State, and I refused. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So, but this came out. It kind of had a similar effect that Baby Reindeer had, where they kind of just I don't want to say snuck it on Netflix, but it kind of just came in a little bit under the radar and then it just got really great word of mouth for a lot of different things. So it's about a 13-year-old boy is accused of murdering one of his classmates, and his family, therapist, and detective in charge are all left kind of wondering what really happened. This stars Stephen Graham is kind of the most notable person here as the dad Eddie. We've got Owen Cooper, who is Jamie, who is the boy accused of said murder. We've got Christine Tremarco, who is the mum rather, Amelia Pease, who is the sister Lisa, and then Aaron Doherty, who is the therapist in that episode 3. We'll be talking about that, and a few other people. It's 4 parts. It's on Netflix. We are going to spoil this. It's been out long enough, I think, to where if you really wanted to watch this, and you should have by now. So we'll start with this. Jake, let's go with our good old tried and true Sif Pop scale. Did you like it, love it, hate it, dislike it, or did you think it was just okay?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I had sort of heard about it. Like, for some reason, Netflix, those best, like the best things they do are the ones they don't actually publicize. Sort of like
Right.
you were saying, like Electric State came and it was like, yeah, that's what they put all the money in, and then they just sort of drop this. People are like, wait, what's this? And it's awesome. I loved it. I came to it sort of late, which we'll talk about what that did to sort of my expectations of what the series actually was. And yeah, despite the hype, I sat down and I did not move from my couch until it was over.
Hmm.
It is excellent.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I loved it, even though it gave me a myriad of different emotions. And for me, I've got two daughters, and this stuff keeps me up at night all the time. So it sucks, but at the same time, there was a lot of hype going into this because I watched this about 2 weeks after it came out when
Probably about the same. Yeah.
everyone was singing its praises. My big issue with potentially going into a show like this is like, there's no way it's this good. There's no way. And the two big things about this show is that all of the episodes are one takes, which that is just a first of
Like
all,
and like actual in today's day and age, it's important to say like actual true oneers, not like because a lot of them that you see, and we might be talking about one of them later in this episode,
Mhm,
like they're set up as one, but they hide takes and hide cuts. They don't do this. There's a scene that I've seen broken down where obviously there's some VFX because they obviously couldn't have the camera do what you see it do, but it still doesn't break. It's just to get past like the impossibility of the setup.
mhm.
So important clarification.
Yep.
It's not like it's a oneer like in some senses the others.
Yeah.
But continue.
Yes. So good call out with that. And then the second thing about this is that this is not a mystery series at all. You figure out, or you, unless they're trying to telegraph something to us that's like how on earth could this be real? It's like, dude, the person who did this was caught on camera doing this. So
Yeah.
there is not a whole lot of doubt about whether or not this individual is guilty. And I think that's going to be something that I think for some people is going to be a turnoff. But I think for others, be like, I'm totally fine with this and just dealing with the ramifications of this instead. So I think for me, that's something that going into it, I was like, oh, it's going to be a nice mystery series. And be like, nope, that is not what happens at all in
See,
this.
that's interesting because, we, like you said up front, like we both were sort of delayed, and I had watched a review, and they basically, before I watched it, and they basically came out and said up front, this is not a whodunit.
Yeah.
Like, you know who did it by the end of the first. That's not what this is about. So
Hmm.
I think that's actually one of the things that really helped me
Hmm.
heading into it is I had no expectations over sort of it being a who done it type of thing. I went into it knowing we know who does it. I've seen the cover art. I can probably guess what that means because that's what makes this story so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew that going in, and I found that sort of twist on the whole formula, aside from the other stuff they're doing with it, just really interesting. As somebody who does like there's whodunits, the fact that they're like, no, there's really no ambiguity. That's not what this is. After the first episode was interesting.
Well, and not only that, so you're like, we as an audience,
Mm,
especially with so much content out there, have
mm,
been kind of trained in a way to possibly expect some type of twist or
mm.
something that happens where it's like, oh, that's what really happened. So, for instance, like now at movie theaters, we're now kind of trained sit tight after the credits. There might be something there. And now, for a lot of people, we all get irritated when either the post credit scene, like there isn't one, or the post credit scene sucks. And it's like, Thanks, Marvel, because sometimes the post-credit scene is pretty great and sometimes it is not. So I think also with this, like I think of a show like Presumed Innocent on Apple TV Plus, for example, where I watched that and that's more of a traditional whodunit, and I was anticipating that when they reveal who actually did it, that there was going to be something there. What they did was like, oh, that's kind of a big twist. So I've seen enough shows where there is something like that. And again, like you said, it subverts your expectations because it doesn't do that. It just here's the information that's presented to you,
Mm,
and it's just showing you the aftermath of all of that. And
yeah.
I think what it does is that it portrays the situation from so many different angles
Mm.
that it just leaves you just stunned by how well crafted this show is.
Yeah, that was gonna be my point. Like, it doesn't even matter that it's not really a whodunit, because that's not really what the show is interested in.
Mhm.
But they do such a good job, because with it being one shots and everything, being in real time in each sort of episode, sort of exploring different aspects of the killing, what they're exploring through each of these different episodes, I found so fascinating, especially when paired with like the technical, like
Mhm.
just knowing the technical stuff you were watching, that more than made up for any mistake. That I was so engrossed with what they were exploring and what they were trying to say and what the different characters were going through in any of the scenes, like even before we know he does it, just watching him. And like, it specifically for me, when I know it's not a whodunit, when I go in knowing it's not a whodunit, see the kid get arrested right away, so I know he's done it. Like, going in with that knowledge almost makes that first episode where you're with him, throughout this whole thing and the booking, and he wakes up and he's peed his pants and he has to get changed and he's scared and he's going through all this, makes it even more fascinating
Mhm.
just to sort of watch as a viewer knowing all that. And I just thought the way they sort of like start to explore and explain things just gave me everything I needed
Mhm.
in sort of what the show wanted to explore.
So why don't we start with this? So we're gonna go back and forth and kind of bring up some things that we liked or things that we want to talk about. And I will volley it to you first. What is something that about this show that really resonated with you that you want to talk about or kind of just showcase as something that you thought was really effectively done?
Well, this show has gotten me to go down a couple different rabbit holes concerning Stephen Graham, and we'll get to those later. One of them was Boiling Point, which I hadn't seen
Mhm.
before this show. I don't even remember hearing about Boiling Point, which is sort of the same thing, same director, Philip Barantini, pairing with Stephen Graham as sort of the creative force, and that sort of creative partnership, I think up top, is really what I come away most impressed with.
Mhm.
Because, like everybody, Stephen Graham, before this for me, he's that guy. He's British actor dude who's usually playing the heavy, and he's great and he's menacing, and that's fantastic. But like the fact that he's writing this and creating this and finding Bartini as a creative partner in all this over the last few years is really fascinating to
Mhm.
me. And I think the way between his writing, Graham's writing, and Bartini's directing, like they just marry each other so perfectly. Because I think, when we talk about the one shots, a lot of it comes down to we think about the shots, which are incredible, and the
Mhm.
blocking and all the work that has to go into it there. But like if your script isn't
Keeping up with
super,
it. Yeah.
super tight, so it's right on time every time, like it doesn't work either.
Mhm.
So those have to work so hand in hand. And having done it in the movie Boiling Point before, like the fact that they pulled this off, so regimentedly is so impressive to me.
There's two things in particular that I kind of walk away from this and be like, I don't understand how on earth they did this. So for one, in the second episode, there is a scene where the one of the detectives is interviewing people at Katie, who is the murder victim, and the same school that Jamie went to at their school. And the boy that they are, some of the people that they're interviewing, they're in a class, and what the kid that they want to talk to escapes out of a window, and he escapes out of a window, and the camera follows through. No cuts, nothing.
Yeah,
Or
that is the one visual effect. If you haven't heard of Corridor Crew, they're great. They, of course, like anytime there's Warner stuff, they get, you know, oh, you got to watch this. So that I think is the one that where they had to do visual effect, and I think they show like the one frame on that left window frame that where you can there's a frame where you can see the gaffer tape, so there's no left window there because obviously they can't take the camera through a way that it doesn't work like
not like
that.
that without being shaky as hell.
Yeah, so that window is not there, but it's still not a cut.
Yeah.
Like they just take it through the sort of space that has the window and then marry it. So that was the point I was alluding to earlier. That
Mhm.
is the one sort of
Mhm.
VFX that they use as far as, they couldn't have the window there and pull that off.
The other one, though, is pretty much the entirety of that third episode, where it just feels so claustrophobic in that
Mhm.
room, even though it's a pretty big room. And just some of the shots that they get of Jamie and the psychiatrist just talking to one another, and how he's constantly like looping around to one another, and just gave me chills a lot. Even the scenes where, like, even just the opening scene where they barge into this house. Like, this is not a tiny, or this isn't a big house.
Mhm.
So the fact that they can get up there, that's great staging. That's great. Like everybody knows where they're supposed to be and just continues to keep going. Like, I would feel so bad if I was the person that messed up like something and be like, oh, you know, start over. But yeah, it
I
was.
I think one of the detectives, the main detective, the inspector, I may be misremembering, but I think he had that happen where he got to the end of maybe the second episode, because it would have to be one of the first two, because he's not in the latter two. I
Yeah.
think it was the second episode. He got close to the end and, flubbed a line,
Mhm.
and they had to do the thing. They had to start the whole thing over again, and there you are. But, like, to your point though, because, every once in a while I have to use, a camera for my job and like photograph rooms in a house or something, just taking photos. And like in some of these, like you said, it's a little cramped and it's small. It's hard to get, just standing there with a regular camera, get good pictures, in certain rooms, let alone, capture something on film where you've got people moving in and out and around. You've got the house, that second episode, you've got that crowded schoolroom with all the kids during the passing time. And like you said, even that third episode, making an interrogation room where there's no cuts and the camera's still able to feel dynamic and use that one shot nature to
Mhm.
still add to it, even though you're in one room for, you know, 85, 90% of the episode, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, like, from a technical standpoint, yes, like this is incredibly impressive, and it's effective because because they're oneers. You're always with somebody. There's no
Mm,
dead space
mm,
or clunky transitions. You're always with like a character of some type, and that just kind of lends itself to
mm.
where you kind of feel exhausted at
Yeah.
the end of some of these episodes because a lot happens
Yeah.
and you don't get a whole lot of room to breathe during certain parts. Like, yeah, I get it. So, like, for example, in the first and the last episode, they take car rides. So, for example, in the first one, it's when Jamie is arrested and they're driving him to the police station. And
Mm,
then in the fourth episode, it's when Eddie's van gets vandalized and they're driving to the hardware store.
mm,
So there's a little bit of a lull there, but there's still stuff going on, particularly in that final episode when they're driving back from the hardware store. A lot happens during that, and you don't miss a beat. And that's really great. And Stephen Graham, to me, is, I think you described it in the perfect way. It's like that guy. Like, I know that guy
mm.
from blah, blah, blah. I know that guy from Snatch. I know that guy from, like, I just watched him in something recently for something I wrote for SiftPop. I think it was the show Taboo. I was like, oh, I know that guy. That guy did blah, blah, blah. So he is in a lot of different things that I have enjoyed him in. And this is something where you realize that somebody has talent behind the camera, and you're like,
Mm.
my God, if this, and then I think you mentioned that you saw A Thousand Blows, the other
Yes.
one that was released,
Yep.
late last year, early this year, which I enjoyed that too. I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty good too. So,
And that's him playing like his usual heavy,
mhm,
which is the roles. And here he's still sort of playing a quote unquote tough guy.
mm,
He's not like a gangster or anything, just maybe a little more closed off with his emotions and more stoic. But he does get those moments, especially in that final episode and the end of that first episode, to really let those emotions shine and
mhm,
be a little deeper. But another thing you mentioned is sort of the oneers being used to allow us to see a bunch of different perspectives, really where the first episode shines. Like the fact that, okay, break in, arrest him, well, first we're with the inspectors while they get ready. Then we're in the house. Then we're on the way to the jail. But then once we get to the jail, inspector, it's following the booking process. It's following the lawyer. We
mhm.
just get to see so many different sides of the process. I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because not only is Stephen Graham and the director tied together, Stephen Graham's also got like a core group of people from a performance standpoint that he works with too. So, for example, one person who was not only in this but was in A Thousand Blows as well was Christine Tremarco, who plays his wife in this. And apparently they've known each other a long time. So they've had years to just develop chemistry together. And not only that, he trusts her to just be able to knock a part out of the park and know full well that he can entrust her to do anything that he needs her to. And that's something that I think is a rare gift that we get in Hollywood, where you get some of those, well, not rare because it happens all the time, but there's certain partnerships out there that yield great results. And I think I'm hoping that this is the start of at least more people taking notice and seeing that Stephen Graham's got this, tiny cohort of people that he works with consistently, and they consistently put out good stuff.
Yeah, the psychiatrist that we've talked about a little bit too, Erin Doherty, she's like the main female lead in A Thousand Blows.
Mhm.
And she's like the head of a female gang. And her accent is so much different than the one because she's sort of down on her luck, lower class, orphan trying to make good in that show, where when she's up against Owen Cooper in the one-on-one basically interrogation scene, she's called out for being posh.
Mhm.
So it same thing with her. They find people who work well and know how to give the performances they need, even if you haven't heard of them
Mhm.
or couldn't pick them out in the crowd, and they just give absolutely stunning performances. She and Owen Cooper are probably the two best performances in this entire show, which is probably why the episode 3 shines so much because it's just incredible.
So you were going you brought up the thing that I was gonna lobby out to you first, which was Owen Cooper, who by all accounts, this is his first role, not just like first like starring role or first like where he's like among top billing. This is his first role, period. And it's kind of embarrassing that this is potentially his first role because it is a what's above a grand slam because
Yeah,
the way that he kind of just goes about all different
yeah,
angles of his character. So when he's arrested, he's this scared,
yeah,
nervous boy who you're not exactly sure what to think of this kid because we don't know anything about him. All you see is that he's scared and that he's crying, and that's about it. And then even during the interrogation, he tells his dad, like, I didn't do this. So then during the interrogation, they start presenting the evidence to him where they're showing pictures of him like around the area that Katie was at, and then they show the video of him actually doing it, and his reaction to that, and more importantly, Stephen Graham's reaction. Stephen Graham is like, "Wait, what? Like you did this?" Because like, look, as a parent, you're just you love your kids no matter what, and this presents a huge conundrum as a parent that you're just like, how do I love someone who has done something so heinous and horrendous? But then you juxtapose that with the way he acts during the scene with Aaron Moriarty, and just how you see so many different angles of him. He's kind of being manipulative, he's kind of being charming, but he also is filled with a lot of rage, and
yeah,
he doesn't know what to do with his feelings, and his priorities are super skewed
yeah,
about what like the last thing that he asks her is, do you like me? And that's the thing that like really sets him off. And it's like, dude, who cares right now? You
yeah,
just don't get it. But Owen Cooper just blows the whole like every scene that he's in, he just blows it out of the water. And I cannot believe that someone as young as him was able to pull this off.
yeah. Because you're right. In the first episode, it's mostly scared, and then he alternates between charming and awkward and nervous and legitimately terrifying in episode 3. It's like so impressive. Like when Aaron Doherty's like legit terrified of him in those couple of moments where he just snaps. Yeah, you get it.
Mhm.
It's awful. And you can see sort of that, where he's usually a good kid,
Mhm.
but he's got this moment where he just can't control himself, and that rage from that night comes out. And talking about Katie or some of the things that happened around the school with social media stuff that went on with the bullying. Even before he snaps, they sort of lay the seeds, and you get like this kid just doesn't get it. Like he doesn't understand. And it's so well done on everybody's part.
Well, and the other thing that this show does a really good job of is that yes, he doesn't understand the gravity of what he's done, but they do actually a pretty decent job of showing all the different factors that have contributed to shaping him into the person that he's become. Because what they do also is that throughout the course of the investigation, you see what's going on at his school. And
Right.
what you see at his school is that you see a bunch of kids who are just simply out of control, teachers who just feel overwhelmed and exhausted and kind of at their wits' end about what to do with a lot of these students. You see that his friends, like two of his friends, one seems like a nice guy, the other's like a straight up piece of shit. So,
Yeah.
and you see that as well. You see some of the anger stuff when we see a couple scenes with Eddie as well. And you see that like even though it doesn't directly tie into it because Eddie says like he's a good dad. He doesn't like he did it the best that he could and he never like hit him or did anything bad but some of that stuff I'm sure
Like
just
the friends group, like when
yeah.
they bring up, like, oh, who are your dad's friends? Who does he hang out with?
Yeah.
It's all like not to the point where it's like quote unquote toxic masculinity that he sort of gets into on social media
Hmm.
through the influencers, but like his dad just has like he hangs out with guys
Yep.
because that's what he was brought up in.
Hmm.
So his dad, he's not seeing his dad with
Hmm.
any female friends.
Yeah.
And I thought the stuff with the social media was done really well, both in the sense of how it can get into the kids, like how they find it and what they can do about it and how it can infiltrate them, but also in the way, like, when the inspector's son pulls him aside and talks to him and just shows him, hey, you're going about this all wrong. You're thinking this. You have no idea what any of this means because you're not looking at
No.
Instagram the right way.
Mm.
And we've touched on it earlier. Like you've touched on it before. You've got daughters. I don't. I was actually talking with coworkers about this show a little bit yesterday who've got kids and just how terrifying that show is. Like I don't have kids and this show
Hmm.
terrifies the shit out of me. Like
Hmm.
I can't even imagine being a parent right now.
Yeah.
Like cuz just insane like how easy it is for them to get like roped into, even if you're trying to let them do social media responsibly, just how quickly that can get out of hand without you even knowing. Because I
Hmm.
think it's one of the things Stephen Graham's character points out in the fourth episode. He was in his room. We thought he was safe because he wasn't going out and getting into
Hmm.
trouble. That used to be the whole thing. Oh, what are they doing if they're out at night? That's not the issue anymore.
No.
It's
It's
what
not.
are they doing when they're on the internet and on their phones and like what are they doing in their room? It's so heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking and it's terrifying to know that because look, when we were growing up, it was all about stranger danger, right? Just or just say no to drugs and things like that. Now it's like we can't even get to that point with stranger danger because now there's all kinds of things on the internet. Like I remember having a conversation with my wife about YouTube and how we need to screen YouTube pretty good if my daughter wants to watch it because some of those videos that come up are like, what is this? What is this? This is ridiculous. So it's terrifying, but also and this is where bringing it all together with Owen Cooper as Jamie is just like touchdown, like award winning, like give him all the awards right now for all of this. So I think that he was just outstanding in this. Jake, what else is something else that you wanted to bring up?
We've talked about it because it's a lot of the technical stuff and then just the performances that
Mhm.
stand out, but like one of the things what makes the Aaron Doherty thing so great aside from you know like we talked about her interaction with Jamie as she's, talking to him for the fifth session and getting to know him so she can dive into the meat of the issues that she wants to get in with here and talk about those different aspects. Like not only how she handles sort of the outburst, but like not touching the sandwich she brought him at the end because she's like so disgusted by
Hmm.
him and what happened. But aside from like that relationship with Owen, like the stuff with the guard
Oh, the guard. Oh my
is
God. All
so
that stuff
great
with the guard.
as well. Like where he's trying to like I don't know if mansplain isn't the right word, but like get up too close on her and talk about like psychiatry, like her psychology, whatever, whichever it is she does, because he's read a book or watched a true crime show or whatever it is. It's just so well done, and like even when she gives herself the break to get the new hot chocolate, like just the acting that goes on there when she gets that bit of respite is just phenomenal.
Oh, that third episode it's for me, it was the best whole episode of the series. And it's got some of the strongest moments in this entire series because the shot that I'm sure you see that people see all the time is the shot of Jamie standing up next to her while she's sitting and just looking down at her. It's just chilling because the camera just sits on it for a second
Mm,
and you just see her just stare at him like just trying to go toe to toe, but even
yeah.
she knows to some extent or another that this kid is different from a lot of the other kids that she's had to deal with. And he doesn't present a lot of like extremely violent tendencies, but like that whole
Well, and
sequence.
even like that's another thing with the writing. Like he doesn't present a lot, but like they even point out he got in a fight
Yeah.
like right before she's coming here
Mhm.
to do the thing. So it does come out, and it's one of the things I was talking about, like with him being terrifying, but also her knowing what she has to do.
Mhm.
Because like you said, she knows she has to stare him down in this moment because she can't show that weakness
Mhm.
until he's gone,
Yeah.
and she almost collapses.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing because it shows just how terrifying somebody that small can be.
Mhm.
It's like you said, with the way they just sort of shift the camera. It's
Mhm.
great.
There's there's so much that's telegraphed there because you mentioned the whole conversation where he's calling her posh, and you see these childish tendencies that he's had because with a kid like him who's kind of at this adolescence at this very fragile age to be exposed to some of the things that he has been exposed to on the internet and just kind of the way that it warps your development. that's
Mm,
that was kind of one of the things that I took away from that scene as well, is that you know, you have to remember that, like, not you specifically, but like the audience has to remember that this murderer is still a child and
mm,
still developing, still trying to figure out, who he is as a person. Because when we first meet him, we're pretty sure that you get a sense that he's just a kid who got angry and
mm,
that's really it. But there's so much more to it. And that
mm,
interrogation scene just conveys that in such an effective way because between, like the talk about how hot chocolate just the way you like it. Like they've obviously built up a rapport and a relationship.
mm,
And I'm curious, like I'd love to hear a little bit more about what they would think, like what Stephen Graham and company would think about some of the other scenes that, were like they tried to get, or like any other ways that we as an audience can see like how some of these other interactions were beforehand as well. So that, and
Well,
again,
to that point, I think they do by setting up that it's your fifth thing and the fact that it's clear that she wants to set up she had to make the rapport, and that I think it does a good job of setting up that this is the session where she's getting into the stuff that she's there to actually evaluate for the purpose of the trial. Like, I think it's made pretty clear just by the context clues that she hasn't gotten into some of this deeper stuff just by the questions that make him a little uncomfortable and stuff like that. And again, I think by the end, when he collapses and then she's disgusted, won't touch the sandwich, and says it's after saying it's his last session because she's now having dug in, gotten what she needed. I think it does a great job of showing us that before all that was like that getting to know you stuff and building that rapport so she could get to these deeper questions. And now, having gotten to these deeper questions, she's gotten the reaction or the information that she needs in
Mm.
order to make her evaluation. Specifically, I think probably with those moments of rage and not understanding, women and relationships like that.
Well, and then also not understanding that what he did is, well, it is telegraphed during that he sort of like he only sort of understands what he did is permanent. Like it's not like he injured her to the point where she's going to recover from it. One of the questions that Aaron Doherty asks is, "Do you understand what dead means?" And it's like, oh, like that's unfortunately a fair question because
Uh,
that kind of shows whether or not he like truly understands what he did, even if it was quote unquote in a fit of rage. So just masterclass in terms of trying to get the answers that she needs, even though she knows that there's so much here that needs to be explored, but she's got all the answers that she needed from her previous sessions, and this one just because was kind of the nail on the coffin at this point. And it probably, even though the events of that happen, how many months after his arrest did that sequence
Seven?
happen? 7 months. And then 6 months later is when we get the scene in the final episode where
Yeah. He
Jamie
pleads
calls
guilty.
Eddie and he
Yeah.
decides to plead guilty because what is there to fight in this?
Yeah.
Because they've got you on evidence. I'm sure she's not going to give a very good testimony about how, what his development was like and how all of that is going. So just that whole scene is just choreographed super well. It's well acted, it's well written. And I'm so glad that you brought up the guard because I just could not stand the guard. And just the way that I think mansplaining is a good way to say it. Just like even like it's borderline like flirting a little bit as well
Yeah.
because it's like a combination of both because he's trying to show her that like he's on the same level as her even though he's clearly not, and saying things like, oh, do you want to trade jobs for a little while? It's like no, or like, oh, it's all in like the body language. I read about that once. It's like, well, no
Yeah.
shit, man. Like she does this for a living. So like why on earth would you say anything like that? But that is also a great way to show the audience that it's not just Jamie. This is just a societal thing as well. And that, like, as much as I couldn't stand the guard, he served a very specific function and he did it so well.
Yeah. I did.
One thing that I will bring up, and I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts about this because this is something that gets brought up from time to time. Katie is curiously absent during this show. So Katie's the murder victim, and the only time that we actually get to see Katie is in photographs and in the video of her actually getting killed.
Mhm.
So, and there is the deputy sergeant that is helping in the investigation. She said something in the second episode that says, "No one gives a shit about Katie. They're only going to remember Jamie," and that is sickening to that. And that to me also is, I don't want to say this goes so far as to, oh, it's perpetuating the problem or anything like that. I think it was very intentional the way that they wanted to keep the focus a little bit more on Jamie and the aftermath of everything that happened. And they did find subtle ways to bring Katie into the conversation, or Katie, or the actress who played Katie, who I believe I read somewhere that her voice is in some of
Yeah,
the music
yeah.
as well,
I think it's the end of the second episode. She's the one singing.
which that's haunting way to just have her somewhat be part of it. But I think for me, I could have used a fifth episode where we see the aftermath on Katie's family or something a little bit more about that because I think that is something that is not explored. And I get it also. It's also, I don't feel like it's the point of
Uh,
the series, but I personally could have used something that gave us a little bit more of the effect because we get the effect on Katie's death to her friends and just
mm,
the rage that they all feel that yeah, they're just wondering it's like, oh, you're gonna let Jamie go or whatever, that like Katie's death is just gonna be in vain. And even the violence that they show some of these boys, and also the way that it's conveyed that there's something to be said that Katie was quote unquote bullying Jamie a little
mm.
bit. So I could have used a little bit more of that. And that is literally the nitpickiest of nitpicks in terms of what I can otherwise just call a pretty outstanding show.
Yeah, I well, and I know, I think I don't remember where I was where I heard it, but I think somebody mentioned like the fact that the inspector brings that up is like one of the ways the way the show's shot sort of is a slight negative, if you want to call it that, because it's
Mhm.
their way of inoculating that, hey, the way we're shooting this, like we don't really get, because I don't think you can do really a fifth episode
Oh no, you definitely
because
can.
it's this may sound harsher than I mean it to,
Mhm.
but like getting something from the it's if it's just after, it's gonna be them crying, and they're dealing with the aftermath just isn't as interesting. It's not as complex because they're the parents of the victim, if that makes sense. Whereas, when we spend the fourth episode with Jamie's family, they're having to deal, they didn't do anything wrong. They still love their son, their brother, even though he did a terrible, horrible thing and obviously has some issues. Exploring that is much more complex, much more interesting. I don't know. I do understand where people are coming from, but I do think I think it's how it's a product of how they decided to do the show.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
I don't think, like we said, you couldn't do a fifth episode studying that, and so I don't think there's really room to address it within this very specific structure, I guess.
Well, so one thing that I read was that Stephen Graham and the other co-creators of the show, they didn't feel like they were the right people to tell the story. And I understand where they're coming from with that. And the hope is that someone out there kind of picks up the mantle and not like do a direct sequel to this, but also talk about the effect that this manosphere has on women as well, particularly because violence against women is one of the direct results of this whole thing. And I think the reason why I kind of walk away from this thinking that I didn't need a Katie centric episode. I didn't need like, hey, let's follow around Katie, let's do a flashback to the day of the death. I'm super glad that it was just like a video because I think it would have broke my heart to see like her actually being killed. And
Yeah, it's brutal enough at a 500 foot,
yeah. So,
distance.
but I think for me, I think where I kind of land on this is that I just hope that the effect it has on this family also kind of jumpstarts some people to think of what happened, like kind of what the situation kind of feels like for a lot of the girls. within the school as well. It is telegraphed a little bit, but it's not explored as much. And again, I can't fault the show for that because I think the ways that they did explore this were all outstanding. And you mentioned that last episode, the final scene of this show broke me because it's Stephen Graham just apologizing and just tucking in a teddy bear in Jamie's bed after he gets the news on his 50th birthday, nonetheless, that Jamie's going to plead guilty and they're not going to go to trial. And he's probably just going to spend the rest of his life in prison at this point. So that whole sequence of just like even before that, when the Jamie's mom and dad, they're just talking to each other. It's like, is this our fault? Did we actually do this? And but they have Lisa, their daughter, as an example would be like, well, no, because we raised Lisa in a similar way, even though it's kind of hard because they're two separate people, so you can't raise them the exact same way. But they did a lot of the same things, and one turned out like semi-adjusted and okay, and the other killed a young girl in a fit of rage after he, which this is something that we didn't really talk about during the interrogation scene where he decided to like try to ask her out to the carnival because she had, topless photos of her passed around at school and he thought that she was just in a weaker spot and she would say yes. I mean, like, what the hell, man? Like
Yeah.
that, oh, that's just
Ugh,
terrifying
ugh,
that is his thought process for that. But it's it's not so much a wish for a fifth episode, but just as a way to just point out that what the deputy sergeant or deputy the other
yeah,
inspector, she's got a point. And I think that was placed in there and it kind of lingers on that point a little bit is that nobody's going to remember Katie. And shit, I'll admit, I had to look up who the murder victim's name was because I didn't remember at first, and then I was like, oh shit, it's Katie, and that's part of the problem as well is that we as a society we are not so much glamorizing, but we want to know more about the murder victim or the murderer, and then
yeah,
the murder victim just gets left behind, and that
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. Totally agree.
Do you have anything else? Any final thoughts? Anything else that you want to talk about in regards to this show?
No, I would just say it sent me down a rabbit hole. Like I said, sent me down a Stephen Graham rabbit hole. I watched Boiling Point, which is an incredible movie. Same thing, one shot, fantastic. And then, yeah, if you like this and you like Boiling Point, a lot of the same people show up in A Thousand Blows, which is on Netflix, doing some different stuff
Hmm.
than they're doing here. It's sort of like a mix of the other two projects. So. It's fantastic. And it's Stephen Knight who did Taboo and Peaky Blinders and
Hmm.
some of those other shows. So good stuff.
Good stuff. I think it's safe to say definite recommend from both of us. To me as well, I've been talking about this with a couple people that movies this year so far, I have not seen Sinners yet or anything like that. Movies this year haven't had the best year so far.
No.
Television, on the other hand, has had a hell of a year so far, and it's capped off with this as well. So this is a, go see it now, and then think about it, stew on it, and
Yeah.
let all your thoughts and feelings and emotions just kind of take you from there. So now for something completely different, let's talk about Daredevil Born Again. And so Daredevil Born Again is the first Disney Plus version of Daredevil because it was on Netflix beforehand. This is kind of a reboot of Daredevil where Matt Murdock finds himself on a collision course with Wilson Fisk again when their past identities begin to merge. That's the premise of the show. So, Jake, before we get into Daredevil Born Again, I'm curious from your perspective, what did you think of the Netflix Daredevil show?
Yeah, I loved it. I think I loved all three seasons. Watched I loved most of the Netflix stuff. I don't think I finished Luke Cage. Don't think I finished Iron Fist. And because I didn't like Iron Fist, I didn't watch Defenders.
Mm.
And I couldn't really finish Jessica Jones because that was the one where you're like, they're just canceling all this stuff. So even after I had to Punisher, both seasons of that and really liked it, loved Daredevil. I had gotten to the point by the time it got to Jessica Jones season 2 where I'm like, they're just gonna cancel it. So I have no energy anymore. But yeah, I did not rewatch it before I watched the show, the sequel series. But I really enjoyed it. Love what it did for action. Though sometimes, as long as people know what they're doing with it, such some cheap imitations, which we may talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really great and it's an interesting addition to the Netflix canon or to the Disney Plus canon as everything just sort of gets homogenized as they add all of their streaming services into one. So
Yeah, yeah. So I love Daredevil, the Netflix series, and I think giving Netflix a little bit more of a chance to showcase what they're able to do, I think that was a smart move on Marvel's part because man, they were building its own like mini universe where they had like a lot of the street level individuals, and I'm so happy that they decided to bring Charlie Cox back into the fold and that most of those, it just seems like it's all canon now. So I'm good with that. And there's a couple things in here that are just really great, like with the Netflix TV shows. Like, first of all, the violence is just cringe inducing with how much violence and gore was in the series. It's brutal. It's just brutal. And like the Punisher just ratchets everything up to 11 as well. But where so we've got Daredevil Born Again. And I would say it was maybe about a 40-50% return to form. And then they did stuff in the middle, and it just kind of makes you scratch your head. And this to me kind of represents just a bigger issue, specifically with these Disney Plus shows, because it's not just Marvel that is having these problems with the Disney Plus shows. It's Star Wars. It's like Disney proper. Like I'm one of those people who I really enjoyed Win or Lose on that's Pixar's TV show on Disney Plus. I even like Dream Productions a little bit, but Disney Plus has consistently shown that they just don't know how to do TV shows, and that is frustrating. And this is where also a lot of the reshoots and rewrites and problems behind the scenes with Daredevil Born Again came back and manifested itself in the series because we talked about this a little bit on one of my other podcasts, me, Nick, and Heath, where we talked about how if you take episodes 1 to maybe 3 as well to give, just to add a little bit more in there, but 1 to 8 and 9, if you take those, that's a pretty outstanding series with just those four. The problem is that there's everything else in the middle, and there is just a lot of inconsistency and a lot of focus on like smaller stories that sacrifice a lot from the bigger story and just don't bring anything to the table. And that for me is where I'm just kind of scratching my head a little bit and wondering, my God, what happened to this? I still enjoyed the series, but the middle episodes are ones that I'm wondering if Disney slash Marvel want those back after kind of seeing just the totality of what they did.
interesting. My sense of I really liked the this season, and I haven't watched the Netflix stuff recently enough to know where I'd rank it in those three Daredevil ones. Like I binged them, but I seem to remember like it's one of those where it seemed those Netflix shows might have worked better if they were sort of more like this length as
Mm,
opposed to the 13.
yeah.
But again, I don't remember. My issue was 15 minutes is awful. I don't like it. And it's not even the foggy thing. that I don't like. It's not the fact that they made it. I think the fake Wonder thing and the effects on when we see Daredevil for the first time are just terrible.
Mm.
And I didn't like it. So I was not, I almost didn't make it past that point in this.
Oh,
But I
okay.
continued and actually got to the point where there are some things that on the bookends don't make sense, like Karen going away so we can have the romance with the therapist.
Heather, yeah.
Yeah, who I liked what we were doing like throughout the season with the therapist. I thought that was interesting. Where she ends up at the end of the season, I'm a little confused by. But other than that, I I actually like I tuned in and I always enjoyed the next
Mhm.
episode. So it actually got more consistent for me
Mhm.
after I got through the rough patch of the premiere.
Yeah.
I sort of got back into the rhythm of sort of the Daredevil shows, and because there might have been some editing too in those first couple episodes that I think evened out as we got into the middle chunk with some of the Muse stuff and some of the other fights. So yeah, I guess my arc was more rough beginning, smoothed out towards the
Mhm.
middle and the end, to the
Yeah.
point where I probably really liked it. So.
Yeah. So we'll do the same thing. We'll lob a couple things back and forth. I'll start this time, and I'm going to start with Muse because you mentioned him. So Muse is a character that I was not familiar with at all, and thank God that Heath educated me on who this person is and kind of just what makes him so terrifying. Is that he's a skilled fighter who is an artist who likes to paint with his victim's blood. Like, first of all, no, that's just weird. But also, it is unlike a lot of villains that we've seen in any of these MCU shows or just kind of in the MCU in general. So I was very interested to see, and we're spoiling this, by the way. So like if you haven't watched this by now, turn this off, go watch it, and then get our thoughts on this beforehand. So if you look at the totality of Muse in Daredevil Born Again, you have Muse's quote unquote introduction with this meek looking kid who comes to Heather's book signing and says, I need a therapist. I need it now. And sure, okay, that's fine. We don't see him in episodes 3 or 5. And then in episode 6, we start to get a little bit more of Muse as a character and as like a villain. And to me, the problem that I had with this is that it feels like the show was trying to have its cake and eat it too. Fisk is the big bad at the end of the day with this. And Muse feels like what so many MCU villains have gotten, which is short shrift, not a lot of development, and a quick and merciless death at the hands of Heather, of all people, as well. So to me, Muse was a prop, not a character, a prop, because Muse was somebody who the anti-vigilante task force uses Muse's death as a way to justify their behavior moving forward, even though they didn't do shit to help out with that situation. So, and that to me also is representative of just Fisk's agenda with, because Wilson Fisk becomes the mayor of New York somehow in like the shortest election cycle on the face of the planet with like really these are all the people that you decided to run up against Wilson and you wonder why he won. Okay, great, because this can fix it, whatever. So to me, it just felt like Muse was just severely underdeveloped and was, I go so far as to say that it's kind of wasted a lot because he could have been an entire season arc for Matt, but instead we kill him off just so that the task force can continue to justify their behavior.
Yeah, having none of the comic background, I didn't mind it, I guess. There's nothing, like, you're right in everything you said. He is a plot device. Like, he's once Hector, which is the sort of the first third, is this trial, and then he gets off, and Wilson's looking for something where he can launch his task force that he wants to. I think he, like you said, he is a tool. He's creepy. He's a major threat, big enough where you can launch a task force.
Mm.
But also B, he's a threat that's big enough to get Matt involved, particularly after, Hector's niece that we've gotten to know, very much an innocent, even more than everybody else who I'm sure was also innocent, can get him to put on the mask again. So
Mm.
I guess, like you said, Fisk is the big bad. So I didn't really mind as much Muse being used because I don't know, I guess for me, he accomplished what I think he needed to. Creepy as hell, as a Seven lover, but anytime you bring a creepy ass serial killer in, I'm on board.
Mhm.
So we've got that, and he gets what we need out of both Matt and Wilson
Yeah.
to set up for the final third. So I don't know. I guess viewing it as a vacuum, I see what you're saying, but I think I got what I needed out
Hmm.
of Muse for the purpose of this story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I have a feeling that Muse is going to be one of those Halloween costumes this year where it's like, if you know, you know. And yeah, because it's creepy. Like the costume's
oh, so
creepy
creepy.
enough and
Probably not that hard to put together.
exactly. So Jake, I'll lobby it over to you. What's something that you want to talk about in regards to Daredevil Born Again?
Well, we've talked a lot about, the fact that it's Daredevil and Kingpin. And that's one of the things that I thought the show did really quite well. There's a ton, like when it wants to make its point, it's cross cutting between Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk.
Hmm.
Like when it really wants to hammer stuff home. And it's used really effectively. I loved all of the mirroring of Wilson with Matt, Kingpin with Daredevil,
Hmm.
about how, they're really just hiding their true self and not allowing it to come out. They're playing these roles and trying to push down those Kingpin and those Daredevil personas. I think the show's really at its best when it's, putting a mirror up to those two and
Hmm.
showing how similar they are.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And dare I say, also, might be a slightly controversial opinion. I think Vincent D'Onofrio has never been better in as Kingpin in this season. First of all, when you kill somebody by ripping their jaw
Oh,
off,
oh my God.
like to me, I paused after that kill scene in the final episode, and I was like, I need a minute, which I don't do very often because I'd like to think to some extent or another that I can handle myself pretty well. But that, dare I say, that might have been the most brutal death I've seen, not only in the MCU, but maybe in general as well, or
Rough.
at
Yeah.
least in a long time. So, but to me as well, Wilson just the way that he goes about consolidating all his power and just everything that they do. And it's kind of terrifying because it obviously parallels a lot of what's going on
Mhm.
currently in the US. And that to me is kind of
Yeah, it almost crept into a negative at times because you're like, oh God, it's too real.
it's
Oh,
too
I don't. Oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
Uh,
make it stop.
but there's just so much good that they did showing just the journey that these two are both on and how we get from Matt Matt not wanting to be Daredevil anymore and Fisk just fighting his tendencies to be the Kingpin, and by the end they're both just back to where they were before, and it was great. I think the only kind of negative about that is I could have used more scenes with Fisk and Matt together, but the ones that we did get were fantastic. So I'll take him. I'll take him.
Yeah, and I, like you said, I love the different sides we get to both of them. Like we get Wilson Fisk literally ripping a man's head in two on one side. But on the other side, we totally get it when he's like, no, no more songs from the children. I can only pretend to have the smile plastered on my face, sitting in front of these children, singing, as I'm forced to, now that I've made myself mayor, I, I have to do these stupid things that I hate and pretend like I'm enjoying them because they're children. And he does both those well. And likewise, Matt, we get fun Matt, we get destructive Matt, we get angry. Oh God, that scream after he has to beat up the cops
Oh
was
gosh.
just an incredible end to an episode. But yeah, we get so many versions of him.
Mhm.
It's we get flirty Matt. Flirty
Oh.
Matt's great. Yeah, I just liked how many different sides of it. Like because they're constantly having to put on these different masks and faces and like I love the fact that like we get to see a bunch of different sides to these characters in this season in particular because it's really about if they can force these personas down like they do talk about in one of the few scenes. But I actually liked, I think we got perfectly what we needed to. They're both working by proxy, and then they force themselves to. We have the initial warning shot, and then we've got the scene at the ball, and I think that's, and then they're fighting each other from afar.
Mhm.
I think we got enough for now, and I only say that because I know we've got it was supposed to be the full season that
Mhm.
they split in half. So I'm good with what we got now because I think it's if they're not working by proxy enough, I think that makes the times when they choose to act less important, if you know what I mean. Because I think it is basically a proxy war, and that makes sense for where they're at. They have their initial meeting, and their all right, shit's getting real meeting at the ball, and then they're forced apart because they're not ready. And I think that worked for me.
Yeah.
I think they chose their spots wisely.
I gotta admit, my favorite moment of this entire season was Wilson Fisk listening to a bunch of children sing "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" and the disgusted look that he has on his face.
He's trying to pretend he's enjoying it.
Mm,
Yeah,
A+ acting on Vincent D'Onofrio's
fantastic.
part. Give him the Emmy right now and the Golden Globe while we're at it, just for that scene, and even the scene with the adult choir as well, who sing like was "We Built This City on Rock and Roll" like his mayor anthem
Yeah,
or something.
I don't know.
So I did appreciate that. One thing, so I will bring up the Punisher in this, and Frank Castle has two major scenes or
Mm.
two episodes that he's in. So the first one is the fourth episode. He's in it, and he's not in it for very long, and he serves kind of like a very specific purpose
Yeah,
in that episode where Matt is trying to find the individual who killed White Tiger. And he somehow senses a Punisher logo on the bullet. You could feel the engraving on
mm.
it. I'm assuming that's what
Yeah,
happened.
that's the sense I got.
So the scene with where they're talking about the parallels that these two have when or that Matt and Frank have when it comes to loss and how they're both continue to struggle with that even though no matter how long it takes or no matter how long it's been since they've actually lost these individuals that it's always going to hurt them and it's always going to be something that causes them to want to fight back in certain situations. And I love the fact that like Frank just like continues to call him Red and just is giving him all this grief for not, just
Enough.
yeah, not going far enough. And then they double down on this very much so in the final episode where the Punisher is he's just killing all of these cops on this task force when Matt is just trying to like grossly wound all of them and just disable them. And again, this conversation continues to come up. But to me, the scene that I appreciated the most about most with the Punisher is the scene after he goes to to Red Hook and he takes out a bunch of the anti-vigilante task force. And then after he comes to, all of these people who just admire Frank wearing, the Punisher logo on their bulletproof vests. They're like, it would be an honor to serve with you. And he's just laughing and is like, you all are a bunch of clowns. Like you don't get it. You don't understand anything that I've gone through as to why I'm doing this. You're doing this because you were given permission by someone else. I thought that was A plus, like an A plus scene with just amazing writing and also just comic literacy there for anybody out there who truly understands that the Punisher is not like someone from a vigilante standpoint that anybody should admire at all. So all of the fact that all of these authority figures and cops admire him is frightening because also it's not just in the show, it's in real life as well.
Yeah.
This happens all the time. So that is where people do not understand that the Punisher is not fighting for the establishment, he's actually anti-establishment. So I don't think you understand what the Punisher actually does as a character. But that scene with him and all of these, they're groupies pretty much. They're just people
Yeah.
who are just fans of the Punisher's work. I really enjoyed that scene, and I was a little leery about having any other Disney Plus characters show up in this, but I'm glad that they eased us into it with the Punisher, at least.
Yeah, it was one of the things like going into the finale, even like 10, 15 minutes in. It's like, yeah, I've got on to enjoying the show, but like, I need more Frank Castle. Like, and then immediately he shows up and starts popping people in the head and doing his Frank Castle thing. So I thought they used him well, addressing the real life, like you said, the real life controversy that the Punisher author has addressed, with cops in real life loving the Punisher and just not getting it,
Mm.
type of things. Same, loved it. But yeah, I did really well to like that was like another one of those pushes that Matt needed to get back out there and stuff. And I just love the differences between the two that again come through in that last episode in the finale. But yeah, they just make a really interesting dynamic, and I was so happy to see Bernthal back again.
Oh yeah.
While we're talking about people who bring back, I just wanted to mention as far as like bringing in random cameos that you could have for a show. I didn't mind Kamala's dad either. Like as a bottle episode on Matt's road to becoming Daredevil again. It's like, hey, look who it is. As a hey, look who it is moment. I kind of like that one. I didn't mind it. It's about as well as you could do that sort of thing, I think.
I love Kamala's dad. So
Yeah.
like the more that we get of him, I am all here for it. That episode when I first watched it worked for me a lot because it felt like a bottle episode. And I think some of the implications in that episode were really good as well because it shows Matt as just this self-destructive individual who's just constantly getting himself into situations where he can either use violence or get hurt or for him to feel something. And I felt like this was an organic way to bring in a different Disney Plus show into this. Whereas conversely, on the flip side, like, and this is where like the swordsman being included in this is like,
Yeah.
mm,
On one hand, it makes sense that he would like given what we know about him, it would make sense that he would be at the big donor parties, just based on what we saw from Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one it makes sense. But that felt a little on the cheaper end. But I totally get that he'd be at these black tie events.
Yeah, I'll talk about a couple new characters that we brought up that I actually quite one that I enjoyed and one that I'm kind of waiting for their story to do something. So we're brought a lot of new characters into this, and I'm just gonna call it what it is. Some of these characters I didn't give a shit about. So for example, Cherry. Like Cherry was pretty much an exposition dump for the most part or as a way to connect Matt with something that's going on. Just not enough there and not enough time to do anything. And
Yeah,
that's
I think he's with. This is the part with Karen randomly going to. I think Karen's gonna be fixed because I think it's set up for her to be back playing a much bigger part in this second half or season two, whatever, however they're calling it or
mhm,
framing it.
yeah.
But with Foggy gone, I think you did need that character
Mm,
who knows and he's it.
yeah.
As far as the people, I mean, Frank knows too, but that's sort of its own separate thing.
Yeah.
So I think he served his purpose there, and as a tie-in to, I'm guessing the sort of see that's the thing with them splitting this into two series is I feel like my my defense is I can see what they're setting up.
And we're just
The difference is I enjoyed this much more than the last show we talked about that did this, which was The Acolyte.
yeah.
This is a much better than The Acolyte, so I'll forgive it a little more.
Mm,
But I can see him as a key cog in the sort of war versus the police
mhm,
that's coming up. Like you can even see in that meeting at the end.
yeah. So we mentioned briefly Heather. I thought her and Matt's meet cute was actually delightful. I
Yeah.
but their relationship just goes downhill in a hurry, and it's not all her fault because boy, that eighth episode, the one at the ball where so this is right after she's the one that kills Muse. And Matt is like, I'm paying attention to you. I'm here, aren't I? And he's like, dude, no, you're
No, you're
not.
not. Yeah.
No, you're not at all. And look, we've all been there. We've all done that. But dude, make it less obvious.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of with you though that like I don't understand how we get from where we first meet Heather to now you're like Mayor Fisk's
Working with, yeah.
deputy like
Yeah.
of mental health or whatever it is.
Yeah, you can't see how terrible the other things the task force
Mm,
is doing are, because it's not like it's necessarily a secret.
mhm.
He's being pretty blatant about it
Right.
because he can.
I'm going to give a shout out to, I think, my favorite new character this season, Michael Gandolfini as Daniel Blake. Who he represents so many people out there, unfortunately. The bros who,
Yeah,
come out and be like, I think Fisk is cool. And then rises his way through Fisk's administration to be eventually become like deputy mayor of communications and he just becomes Fisk's mouthpiece and it's just terrifying. And Michael Gandolfini just does such a great job in that role, being like somewhat slimy, but also he's also straight up terrifying as well. But the other role that I quite enjoyed, I'm just waiting for it to pay off. I was interested in some of what BB was doing, but they're just I'm like you're
yeah.
talking about. I
This is
hope
a
that it pays off
yeah.
next season
I'm
somehow.
I'm interested, especially since it was setting up for the commissioner to be her big source.
And then he
And,
wasn't.
and then he's not. And I don't know, like, based on how quickly things move from the end of episode 8, episode 9, I don't see how he had enough time to get her all the information he promised. Maybe it's his chief of staff finally
Mhm.
growing a spine that does it. But yeah, that's the one I was going to say next, if you didn't.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what the on the street
Mhm.
things end up rounding into with BB. And do we even know what her pen name is?
Nope.
Because he alludes to it,
No.
but I don't think we see that at all.
No, I don't think we do either. But just when you think BB is somebody who's like, oh, you've sold your soul to Fisk's administration, the conversation that her and Gallo, the commissioner, have at the ball, where they talk about how, Fisk is the primary suspect in your uncle Ben Urich, who I still miss Ben Urich. I think he was just
I
killed
forgot that's who that was.
killed
Okay.
off a little too soon, but I get it as well. I thought that conversation was really compelling, and I was really looking forward to their partnership. And then now I'm not. But other than that, I will give a shout out to Buck as well. I think Buck had some interesting moments this season as well, but we get a lot of like new characters here that I'm just like I'm just waiting for something to come about with them.
Mm.
In some cases, like Sheila, for example. First of all, fuck you, Sheila. Like honestly, because the in that final episode where like she pretty much turns Gallo in and just kowtows to the kingpin. I get it. That's what people are doing right now.
Mm.
It is about survival at this point. But seriously, fuck you. Then Kirsten,
Yeah.
the foggy replacement in all
Yeah.
of this, just not enough there, kind of similar to Cherry, and I'm hoping that pays off at some point.
Yeah. Well, that goes into one thing that I wanted to talk about because we do
Mhm.
get one trial with Hector Ayala, and
Yeah.
it's really good and has some ramifications, obviously,
Hmm.
for what goes on. But we don't get a lot of like Matt Murdock stuff.
No.
Like we get the other case that they're working on that's alluded to as Matt's like having his fallout
Mhm.
and his crisis internally, but we don't get a lot of legal stuff
No.
with Murdoch. And this seems like it would be rife for that
Mhm.
sort of thing. So I love the White Tiger stuff. Killing a man while using the song from the end of Man on Fire is a cheat code for me. I don't even know what the song title is.
Mhm.
It's just the song at the end of Man on Fire
Yeah.
that's cheating. I hate that. I'm also interested to see, just to backtrack on the characters,
Sure.
I'm interested to see what happens with the niece. I think the obvious thing that's hinted at is that she becomes the new White Tiger
Hmm.
eventually, but like, what role does she have like in the rest of the season? I, because she's obviously still pretty young.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious what role she seems to have. Because there is some sort of like relationship between her and Matt, as
Hmm.
far as like they've bonded over the injustice and
Hmm.
all that sort of stuff. So I'm interested to see what they do with her, yeah, if anything, the rest of the season.
The only two new character that haven't been shouted out, Powell, who is the cop that Matt
Great
kicks the
slime
ship.
ball. Yeah.
Yes, like absolute slime ball of a cop. But he gets the shit kicked out of him by Matt, and then it becomes a bigwig in Fisk's anti-vigilante task force. Just a slime ball through and through, perfectly played by the actor. So, no notes there. Just wanted to at least just acknowledge him. The only other character here that's newer to shout out is Adam, who is Vanessa's lover after Wilson goes to Echo, I suppose. But this is just another thing that's like, it doesn't really amount
Yeah.
to anything at the end of the day. It's just manufactured drama. And I'm still trying to reconcile, like, boy, like you're the rebound person and you're just the exact opposite of what Vanessa is attracted to. So I'm still kind of reconciling that and just wondering, it's like, how on earth did you pull somebody like Vanessa Fisk? Like you have
Yeah.
artist hands, like I get that, but it's like, oh, I just I don't see it. I really don't. But
Yeah,
whatever. That's
fine. We needed them to come together.
yep.
Whatever, repair their relationship.
Yep.
Cool. Sure.
Yep. Jake, anything else that you wanted to bring up with Daredevil Born Again, and any speculation that you have for season two or
Uh,
season one part two?
I mean, obviously they've sort of drawn the battle lines, but I would like to get a little more of the like I just sort of mentioned, like the one legal with White Tiger that we get, and the stuff about the guy he has to settle for 10 days in jail
Mhm.
for. We get a little legal stuff, so I'm hoping we get a little more of that, because like I said, this feels like people should be filing
Mhm.
stuff, you know? So the lines are drawn, but yeah, I think I'd like to see a little more legal showdown, maybe.
So to piggyback off that, I definitely want to see more religious stuff. We get nothing this season in regards to Matt's anything with religion. And
Little bit in that bottle episode, but that's about it.
sure, okay.
Yeah.
But to me, that to me is just as compelling as Matt's pursuit of justice through the legal system. And that is a huge part of who Daredevil is. And I hope that season two addresses that a little bit more. Where and what is Bullseye's role in all of this? Where is he? Because he's the one that killed Foggy. He gets paroled out of jail, tries to kill Fisk, and now he's on the run. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be part of the resistance now? Which I don't think I would like that, but are you going to?
He's definitely not on Team Fisk, though.
He's definitely not on Team Fisk. I will give you that. His escape from jail where he spits a tooth at somebody was
Sure.
chilling, to
Yeah.
say the least. Also kind of hilarious, but it was chilling. So I'm wondering where that's going to go. I'm wondering if any other Netflix characters are going to show up in this, and in order of operations, I would want Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and then Iron Fist can sit out if he really wants to. I'd even take Elektra as well, but I don't know. We'll see. Also, where the hell is Spider-Man in all of this? He lives in New York, right? But again, we can't do that because the Tom Holland is just
Yeah.
this is far too small for Tom Holland to be in.
Yeah, I wonder almost if just based on the characters they're actually teasing, like we mentioned with the swordsman and Kamala's dad. I almost, if I had to guess, I'd put better odds on Miss Marvel
Mhm.
or this feel or like Haley Steinfeld
Haley
showing up
Kate Bishop, yeah.
before any of the other people from the
Like
Netflix
actual
show.
Avengers, yeah. No, I would full-heartedly agree with that.
Just based on who's involved. Like that we've seen her dad already and he knows Matt, though he obviously doesn't know the secret. And the fact that Jack's been taken. I could see Kate, you know, joining up to rescue him or something.
So, quick fun story about the final episode. So, I was watching the opening credits of the final episode, and Tony Dalton's name shows up, and I was like, "Cool, we're gonna get the swordsman fighting side by side with Daredevil." And no, all you get of the swordsman in that final episode is him sitting in a cage. That is it. I'm sure he got paid $1 million to do that, just to sit in a cage for a couple seconds, but I found that hilarious. And then the last thing is that I'm not quite ready to concede that Foggy's completely dead, but it's looking that
He's
way.
dead, so
But
dead.
Karen, I'm still just wondering what Karen is gonna do next season, because is she back for good? Is she just kind of
It
doing this as a
seems
pit
like she's
stop?
back. It seems like she's back for good, which would be good because it was just weird
Yeah,
that she
just up
went
and
to a
left.
whole nother coast.
Yeah. So suffice to say that we both enjoyed it. I think you enjoyed it a lot more than I did, because I've got some problems with this season, but those final two episodes in a vacuum are really good, but in context of the whole season, I had some issues with it, but at least it ended on a high note. I'm so glad that it ended on a high note, a very violent note as well. And I think we're both looking forward to season two whenever it decides to drop.
And did they shoot it back to back,
I
or did
thought
they
they
split the shooting?
I don't know
Because
if I'm
yeah,
being honest.
I would think it's coming out pretty soon. But yeah, I it's better than what they've been doing recently as far as TV. Because like I liked Skeleton Crew. I think this is better. It's definitely better.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'd rank it. Hawkeye is my favorite Marvel TV show on Disney Plus, but this would be up there because I usually just think most of the Marvels are at best
Hmm.
fine
Yeah.
and sometimes not that. So this is a step above fine, probably maybe slightly, though I did have my issues. Like I said, the first 15 minutes was atrocious, but hit my stride, got excited for it after that. And like you said, that's whenever I binge a Netflix show, I get the same thing.
Hmm.
If you leave me on a high, I'm gonna be excited for whatever's next. And you're right, this did that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited on next.
Cool. Well, Jake, thank you very much for talking about Adolescence and Daredevil Born Again. Great conversation. Always great to have you on. Do you have anything you want to plug, and where can the people find you?
You can just find me on SiftPop. I write a few reviews a month there on the writers' room. I'll pop on other SiftPop writers podcasts every once in a while, like this one. Otherwise, I'm on Letterbox at J Bourgeois Bourgeois. I don't really post to Twitter anymore, but I will post to Blue Sky. So that's Jake hyphen Bourgeois again Bourgeois.
Cool. Good stuff. Appreciate all you do for Sif Pop and keeping us all in line when it comes to the BEC. But also, thanks for coming on again. Appreciate it. Looking forward to having you on again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.